Good morning, one and all. This is Dr. Diana. Welcome to session 26 on modern software engineering. We have been we have completed revision of unit 3, 4, and 5. We started with unit 2, and we have seen some of the main aspects in agile development. And in the agile development environment, we have to build a collaborative uh, environment. That's very, very important in agile development. So that is the baseline upon which all the other strategies work. How to establish this collaboration among the teammates and how to productively move the team forward is what we have been discussing in the agile collaboration and then unit 2. And we have seen that the trust component of the entire team is very, very important during the development phase. So we have seen certain strategies for establishing trust between the team members so that they can effectively communicate. And then we have seen how sitting together can improve the agile development process. And we have also seen that the customer has to be really involved in all the discussions and the demos of the development phase. Only then the development will turn out fruitful or effective. And every time the customers are involved in the development phase, the more the stakeholders are involved, the more appropriate the software develops to be. So we also see when we are trying to communicate with the customer, we have to follow a ubiquitous language. Ubiquitous means to be present everywhere, and a ubiquitous language means you have to go in with the terminology that suits both the customer and the developer. The developer might be talking in terms of classes and methods and functions and implementation interfaces and all that, and the domain expert or the customer will be talking about sales, values, indicators, reports, and all of these. So the programmer must be able to understand the domain expert and to talk it out in their language. That will help us build a better collaborative environment. And to practically put this collaboration into use, we are going to see some of the strategies that can help us put this collaboration into use. The first one is called as a stand up meeting. A stand up meeting is a very informal kind of meeting where people can talk to each other and decide on how what to proceed with next. We know the ultimate goal or objective of this stand up meeting is to know what our teammates are doing and inform that to the other people. There's a good reason that organization hold status meetings. People need to know what is going on. So XP projects have a more effective mechanism of this, which is the informative workspaces and the daily stand-up meetings. Apart from how a formal meeting goes on in organizations, these two aspects help in better effective communication and a replacement of the formal meeting, in fact. Now, how to hold a stand-up meeting daily? It's a very simple process. Ask everybody to form a circle, and you have a preset time every day. Every day you have a time on your schedule when everybody comes together. They stands in a team, in a circle, and one at a time each person briefly describes new information that the team should know, something that the team was not informed of in the earlier meetings. So the participants can specifically answer these three questions to keep it more effective. The first one is, what did I personally do yesterday? And what will I do today? And what are the problems that are preventing me in making the progress? When I say these, when I say the answers to these three questions, I can inform the others of what work I have completed or what input I can provide to the other team members, and what I do today gives the other people an information of what I may require from their end, and what are the problems preventing me in doing that progress. When you answer that question, it resolves any dependencies that you have among the team members. And when you conduct these stand up meetings, don't wait for the stand up to start your day. You can start off your day, in between your day, somewhere in the middle, you can still have your stand up meeting. And you can restrict to 30 seconds per person, which is usually enough for conveying the right amount of information to your team members. And outsiders who are not part of the team can also get themselves involved in these stand-up meetings, but they do not involve inside the circle. They stand outside the circle, and if at all they have any relevant information to contribute to the team, they can join, they can speak up. Otherwise they are not allowed to speak. Say for example, you can invite any of your domain experts also to your stand-up meetings. They'll get to know what you are progressing, but they essentially don't speak up until they have some relevant information that they can put inside your schedule. And when you conduct stand up meetings, it also makes sure that you do not extend any dependencies. Your communication there solves certain problems as soon as they come up. You put the problem in front of your entire team, and somebody part of the team is able to guide you through the next level or face you to the next level, so you don't get stuck up in between. And then once you have conducted your stand up meetings, everybody now is aware of what they are doing and what the others are doing. The second job in agile development is to go back to your place and then start development. Now, once I start developing, I have developed a bit of code, and my teammate has developed a bit of another code, and both of these has to be integrated into the final production code. When we do integration, not all pieces of code get integrated quickly. Every piece of code may have its own difficulty in integrating with the other code. What could be the possible solution for coming up with a better integration? The answer is to come up with some coding standards. These are a joint aesthetic. So you have a style, the entire team can adopt the style. We have our own way of producing code. We refine our style of producing code over many years until we think it's most readable, most compact, and the most informative it can be. But this cannot be reached at a very early age. So, to overcome this, the goal is to create a collective work that is greater than the individual could create. So we need to create a coding standard or a protocol. It's more like a guideline to which all the developers of the team agree to adhere when they start programming. So each of the programmer or the coder in the team, they agree to use certain protocols and naming conventions, style, text formatting, and all of this, so that when they integrate, it becomes easier. Now, when we know that we have to follow a guideline, how do we create the guideline? So, how do we create a coding standard for our team? Creating a coding standard is an exercise in building consensus. A consensus means more like a vote taking, where you count how many people agree with your perspective. The first is to create a minimal set of standards you can live with. So don't force stringent rules on people and then expect everybody to follow. It will not work. So you need to come up with a basic set of rules, basic principles, and make it mandatory for everybody to follow that. And then you focus on consistency and consensus over perfection. So our idea is not to come up perfectly, but to get better. And these coding standards and protocols, they help us drive something better. We may not be able to achieve perfection, but if 90 percentage of the people follow your coding standard, then about 90 percentage of your code is going to integrate seamlessly. So the more the number of people adopting the coding standard, the more easier it is to establish your integration. Now, when you talk about coding standards, where all do we define the standards? There are certain areas in which people show their style in writing the code. If we can put some rules or basic dress code people can follow, it will help in your integration. So these are some of the areas where you might have to define your standard. This is in depending on your language. So if you use a C language, your coding standard is going to be different. If you use Ruby on Rails, your coding standard is going to be different. So it is language specific, and you can select some industry standard style guide per language. C is a text formatted language, so you can form some naming conventions for your functions and the way you write the indents in your code. All of this can be part of your coding standard. In Ruby on Rails, the coding standard might be different, but you need to adopt some industry standard style that the people can stick on to. And these are some of the key areas in which you have to define your standards. In development practices, what do you develop? How do you develop? And the other thing where you can define your coding standard is the way in which you use your tools, key bindings, and the IDE, or the integration development environment. So all these aspects, how do you use them, can be mentioned in the coding standard. And then you have to mention how you can use files and directory layouts. In what form do I create the directory layout for creating a particular file, so that if somebody else also uses the same format, then it is easier to manage your file system. And then you have to identify standards for building conventions, for creating error handling and assertions. And then you have to define different approaches to events and logging. And you might have to also define some design conventions and text formatting, indenting, and all of that, that can help you develop the software according to certain basic guidelines. And when we move on into we have seen what are the areas in which we can define our standards. We now have to see how to establish this standard in our team. You hold a meeting, and then after a particular thing, you just ask everybody to announce their intention. Say for example, you come up with a C program. Say in a C program, the function name uh, should define your process, and it should say some information about your arguments, is what is the coding standard that I adopt. I put all of these standard coding formats on a flip chart, and then if somebody has some better way of doing it, they raise up and speak their intention to the entire team. If everybody on the team agrees to that, to whatever the person says, then you change it on the flip chart. So to do this, you take a thumb voting. Anybody who holds the thumb up means they agree. If they put their thumb down, it means to disagree. And if they put their thumb sideways, it means they'll go along whatever the group decides, or they are neutral to this. So when you define your standards, you put it on a flip chart, and everybody raises up and says what they feel they can do best, or what is the standard the team can adopt to become even more effective. So then you take a thumb of votes, and depending on the thumb vote, you can make changes to your flip chart. So for every aspect of program development that you do, you will define a standard which is agreed upon by all the teammates. Now once you have defined these standards, These standards must be made available to all the programmers. All the programmers now should adhere to the standard now. As they start coding, they should stick on to these coding standards so that their code will integrate better and they will end up developing a better software. And these are some of the strategies that can help us adhere to the standard. The first one is pair programming. When we work together in pairs in development, they are able to catch mistakes earlier, better, and it also helps them maintain certain self discipline. No matter what standards you choose, someone will probably be unhappy with some guideline, even with a consensus based approach. Not everybody is going to completely agree to it and then follow your coding standard. In that case, you'll probably find some practices jarring and grating at first. Over time, you'll get used to it. Coding standards are in many ways an aesthetic choice. It doesn't really matter what the standard is as long as it is consistent and thoughtful. It should make certain things more effective. So I've started coding using these coding standards, and what happens next? I've developed something and I have a piece of code ready with me using all these coding standards. The next thing that we will do is called as the iteration demo. An iteration demo is a live demonstration of whatever you have developed to your stakeholder and other parts of the team. This objective of the iteration demo is to keep everything in reality so that it is open for everybody and everybody is able to get a clear glance of what the team's progress is. In an XP team, if an XP team produces working software every week, so it happens right from the first week. First, it is difficult to pace up with the standard, but then you get used to it. The biggest challenge is to keeping up the momentum going. The first few iterations, people will have a real good rush with the project. They will want to showcase themselves, so the work they put in will be efficient more, and you can also reach your iteration commitments. But how do you keep this momentum going? The uh, key idea is to help everybody stay productive over a period of time. To do that, an iteration demo is a powerful way. First, it's a concrete demonstration of the team's progress. The team is always proud to show. So, when you have your product, your bit of production code that is ready, you can proudly showcase it to your stakeholders and to other members of the team. Gaining that approval and their appreciation will help you maintain some momentum in the development. And iteration demos are to be kept very, very honest. Means whatever I've completed, I'm just going to showcase. I can't, I just don't have to foolproof. It's more like foolproof, where you can't fool around your stakeholders and say what you have not done. And the iteration demos are open to all stakeholders, and some companies even invite external customers to attend them. It is harder when you try to push your iteration deadline to the next. When stakeholders are expecting your demo, you just can't push your deadlines. Finally, the demo is an opportunity to solicit regular feedbacks from your customers. So this is going to help you gather all the feedback from your customer so that you can improve or refactor your code in the next iterations. How do you conduct an iteration demo? You just invite everybody who is interested to join, and the entire demo should take 10 to 30 minutes, not more than that. You calmly describe whatever problems you have handled in the previous iteration. You demonstrate the features that are scheduled for the next iteration and what value they have in the project that you develop. And when you conduct this iteration demo, there are two questions that are very, very important. Ask these questions to yourself. Is our work to date, up to this date, satisfactory or not? The second important question is, can we continue doing the same work or not? These questions help keep the project on track, and remind your sponsor to speak up if they are unhappy. If they are not satisfied, this is the right time for them to speak up and give you suggestions. And you should be communicating well enough with your sponsor that her answers are never a surprise. So it means even though they are disappointed, you should be knowing that they will be disappointed if they are given what you have developed. And an inability to deliver or to showcase a demo is a very, very clear of a danger that is coming up. So an iteration demo is a very important aspect in agile development. Apart from these iteration demo, every time we come up with an iteration, we complete a feature or we build something, we are supposed to report this back to the client. What is this reporting? The goal of reporting is to inspire some trust in the team's decision. When I keep my client and the other parts of my team well informed of what I am doing, people trust me and they trust the decisions that I take. This can be done in the agile development, but in agile development we see that the entire team sits together in during the development space, and we also have informative workspaces that can track our progress, and the entire team has all the information that is needed at our fingertips. Then where do we need reporting? We actually don't need reporting, but the people who are not there on your team, particularly the upper managements and the stakeholders, they need this reporting. So what are the types of reports that you can generate? The first one is called as a progress report. This progress report reports on the progress of the team, such as the iteration demo or a release plan. Although progress reports seem to exist so that stakeholders can monitor and correct the team's direction, that's not their purpose. Instead, good progress reports allow stakeholders to trust the team's decision. The other forms of progress reports can be a vision statement, a weekly demo, a release and iteration plans that you have generated during your development, a roadmap of what all things you plan ahead and what you have accomplished already, and a simple status email can also be sufficient. It can serve the purpose of a progress report. The new kind of progress report is called as a burn up chart. A burn up chart gives you a bird's eye view of your entire project. It shows the progress of the project and it predicts some date for the completion of the project development. Most of the teams produce a burn up chart when they update their release plan. So every time you make some changes to the release plan, you can prepare your burn up chart and then see if you are going towards the same completion date as you have planned. The other kind of report is called as a management report. A management report is when you inform some stakeholder or upper management about what you are doing. There are some numbers or indicators that can be used in a management report. The first one is called productivity. Productivity is how many man hours of work each people is able to contribute to your project. And then the throughput. The throughput is the number of features the team can develop in a particular amount of time. And you also can count defects. Defects is an interesting way. If you count the defects, it usually helps you in tracking down the time towards your completion. So these are indicators that can help the management or report the management about your progress. The another form of management report is called as the time usage. This is the most used form of management report. It calculates the time used by every team member on different aspects of his work. So every team member has multiple roles to play and they allot time for each of their roles. So you can come up with various roles the team members are taking up. The first one can be unaccounted and non-project work. For example, time spent on meetings, administration, company-wide meetings. All these time are unaccounted. So that goes. And then you have out of office hours. So it can either be a vacation or your sick leave. And you also have time that are allotted for improving the skills of the team member, training sessions, research time. We have seen in introducing Slack how to include research time. And there are a lot of time that is spent on planning also. Every team member has allotted time for planning. They can spend this time in retrospection or in iteration demos, in release plan, and etc. etc. Then the most important part of their time usage is the development. The actual time spent in testing, coding, refactoring, and designing of the software. So this is the most important part, although there are other aspects that use the time of the employee. Now this is a chart which is part of the management report, and this is ideal. This is most acceptable form of the time usage. You can see that there is so much of time given into development, and then a little bit on planning, and a little bit on improving of skills. Then you have out of office hours, and then you have some time that is unaccounted. And we can see this gives the management an idea of how the team member is performing or contributing to that particular project, and how their time can be best used in the future. So we have now seen most of the concepts covered in coming up with a collaborative environment in the agile development workspace. So this completes our unit 2, and we will be starting with revision of unit 1 in the next session. This is Dr. Diana signing off. Thank you.